This is the Uprising Revival. Welcome to today's show. I'm sure some of you have heard about this, goat yoga, and I want to talk about the normalization of goats. Now, I know it sounds like a weird thing. It has nothing to do, per se, with the actual goat. I've done videos covering animals, such as the serpent, the snake, the owl. And some people actually will react to the video in a way where they're thinking that, don't say all owls are evil and don't say all goats are evil. I'm not telling you to get a slingshot and go shoot owls. I'm not telling you to run over goats with your car. I'm an animal lover just like everybody else out there. I'm talking about the symbolism of the goat. We are seeing it normalized more and more on television and in the movies. Okay, and obviously, for those of you who have somewhat of common sense, you're aware that the goat represents the Baphomet, right? The goat with breasts and a penis. Now, I hate to break it to you about goat yoga, but guess what? Somebody wasn't just doing yoga one day and said, hey, you know what? This is pretty fun, but I'd like to really try it with a goat on my back. Huh? Yeah, me too. Yeah, and I also like to go scuba diving with an anvil tied around my ankle. I mean, really? But people hear this stuff, they're just like, oh, how fascinating. We're going to put a goat on your back. This is just more of them rubbing everything in our faces. Okay, the goat is obviously not just representative of the Baphomet. The goat is representative of Satan, right? And we know of Aleister Crowley's obsession with the goat. Okay, in his book, The Magic of Aleister Crowley, a handbook of the rituals of Thelema, he talks about the lust of the goat. He says, the eye, Satan, my lord, the lust of the goat. He talks about how thou goat exalted upon earth in lust. This is what it represents. And suddenly you see this rise in celebrities from Kevin Hart to Kate Bosworth. All these people are practicing, goat yoga, and they're trying to make this like a normal thing. Now, I've covered yoga before, and people have been offended by the fact that I've talked about how yoga is occultic. And they go, oh, you're just out of your mind. It really helps my back. Well, don't kill the messenger, okay? I mean, when Aleister Crowley's got a book, he's got many, many books on all of these rituals, these satanic rituals of summoning demons. And one of the books he's got is about yoga and how he uses yoga as a practice to open these gateways, okay? So just because you practice it doesn't mean that you're a Satanist or something like that. But it's probably best to avoid these types of exercises and routines because they're not really exercises. There's a reason that this stuff becomes, well, I shouldn't say they're not really exercises, but there's more of a spiritual meaning behind it, right? That's why they do yoga and meditation and all this stuff, right? And I've covered it before in videos. But there's a reason it became so normal, right? And everybody does yoga now. It's like if you don't do yoga, something's wrong with you. You have men doing yoga, women doing yoga. They normalize all this stuff. Remember, I constantly am talking about this, normalizing cannibalism. Normalizing all of the rituals and the practices of the occult, from the small rituals from Freemasonry all the way up, to the normalization of the stuff that we're seeing go on now with children and how the children are now, treated as adults in these television shows. The children are lecturing the parents and all that stuff. So take a look at this demon here. This is Leah Hersig, okay? I'll read you a little bit about who she is, but she was considered or consecrated as Aleister Crowley's Babylon, his Scarlet Woman. Okay? And she wrote in her 1921 diary, I dedicate myself wholly to the great work. I will work for wickedness. I will kill my heart. I will be shameless before all men. I will freely prostitute my body to all creatures. Sounds like a wonderful person, right? I mean, talk about disgusting, disgraceful. This woman is rotting in hell, that's for sure. But what's important to note about this woman, as she was Aleister Crowley's, Babylonian prostitute, is that when they were in Crowley's, the Abbey of Thelema, which I believe is in Italy, which is still up, which should be burnt to the ground, they partook in rituals that involved pedophilia and all sorts of things. And this woman would sleep with and perform these black magic sex rituals with just about anything, including bestiality. And one of the rituals that was performed was her having sexual intercourse with a goat. Okay? And they've tried to discredit this. They've tried to say, oh, no, that's a myth of Aleister Crowley, like they do with everything else, right? They come out with all these articles like Vine and Oh yeah, they talk about how people have just made these up. These things didn't really occur. He wasn't really into pedophilia, even though his books talk about it. He wasn't really into bestiality. Of course he was. There's no doubt that he was. So the goat, which represents the devil, was used in these black magic rituals. And this isn't the only place that we see the goat. But I want to point out how you're seeing repetition now with the goat everywhere, right? So not just goat yoga. What else are we seeing? Okay, we've seen things such as I pet goat, right? Goat supposed to represent the greatest of all time. So in sports, for anyone out there who watches sports, they'll say that a certain athlete is the GOAT. Okay? The word GOAT itself, which I even slip up on this sometimes because it's just hard to get the repetition that we've all been trained, into our heads to get it out of our heads. But a kid is a child, okay? Informally, it's also known as a young goat. The word kid, right? And we always say kids or kid. It represents a young goat. There's a reason that they've normalized that word. Let's not forget that George Bush, before the ritual on September 11th, was reading that book about the goat. Off the top of my head, I forget what it was called. I believe it was My Pet Goat, right? And he was reading that book right before the ritual. And of course, he's supposedly, which I believe is 100% true, the grandson of Aleister Crowley. In the film The Witch, which is endorsed by the Satanic Temple, among other satanic groups and organizations out there, in this film, the goat is represented as Satan. When the goat speaks at the end of the film, the goat is representing Satan. And you'll also see other popular TV shows, garbage television, but Christina Cavallari's TV show, Very Cavallari, right? They have the goats showing up on this show. These are just all occurrences where we're seeing the goat become more and more normalized. And goat yoga, it's amazing to me. People are just like, I'd love to try goat yoga. It's like, huh? I mean, does anyone have anything in their heads at this point? Sure, let me try doing exercises with a goat on my back. I mean, and they think there's like nothing to it. Like some person suddenly was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if, you got in the downward dog position and we put a goat on your neck? Oh, yeah. And then suddenly all of Hollywood is doing it. All these TV shows, you're seeing it. All these news outlets are reporting on it. And then if you Google it, you can see, oh, it's sweeping the nation. Everybody's performing goat yoga. This is the normalization of this Baphomet society that we are living in. And I wanted to point it out. It is so ridiculous how people don't even question how these trends start. And then they hear people like me and they're like, no, you're crazy, man. Somebody just definitely had the idea and then it went viral and everybody got on board. I mean, can I come up with an idea like that? And let's see if it goes viral. How about we all lift weights, and while we're doing a bench press, people tickle you in the armpits and you see if you could actually, lift the weight up or if you're going to drop it on your throat. I mean, that's how ridiculous goat yoga is. But this is the normalization of it. And I wanted to show you the repetition of these things. Obviously, all of this goes back to Crowley. Yoga itself goes back to him. And I don't care what people say. Well, obviously, yoga was around long before Crowley. I'm aware of that. But the fact that it's become so normal and it's become such a huge thing in America that everybody has to perform yoga. Oh, I got my yoga class. Oh, my yoga. Oh, my yoga. Oh, my meditation. Well, they hold the 666 sign up with their hand. They don't even realize what they're summoning and what they're doing. Because people are just sound asleep. You have to think like this when you see things, when you see repetition and trends. Why are they doing it? Who is doing it? Who's telling you? You got Kate Bosworth, Kevin Hart. Why are these people suddenly doing goats? Oh, because we're all supposed to laugh and think it's funny? Like it's hilarious that somebody's doing push-ups with a goat on their back? I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's all right in our faces. This Baphomet society. It makes me so sick to my stomach to see these people, to see how they just get away with this stuff, and then see how dumbed down our society is because they just go, oh, come on, man, you're being a hater. You're come on. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but it makes sense to do yoga with a goat on your back. Give me a break. And again, I'm not condoning anything negative towards the goat, the animal itself. There's obviously a reason that they chose the goat and their belief, and Crowley's belief that the goat represents lust and represents Satan. Okay? But just like the owl represents knowledge, it doesn't mean if you see an owl, you just throw a rock at the owl. Of course not. But these signs and these symbols, these animals that they adopt and they use for their rituals. And the goat is used in a lot of their black magic rituals. The goat is usually the animal that they slaughter in these rituals, right? They slaughter sheep, they slaughter goats, they slaughter all kinds of animals, depending on what coven it is. If it's witches involved who pretend that they don't do this stuff, or Satanists. But just be aware of the stuff that you see getting pushed through the television and why it's there and what they're trying to do. Because they are trying to, they aren't just rubbing stuff in. They're normalizing these things. And if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you should be able to see all this stuff, especially through repetition, because that is how they get people on board and under their control. I thank you for listening to today's show. God bless all of you and your families.